When we say that we are Christians, we are saying that we are followers of Christ. And to be a follower of Christ, it's more than just walking with him or going behind him. To be a follower means that we live like him, we think like him, we love like him, we treat people the way that Jesus would treat them. And that's what that means. And that our lives are replicas of what Jesus did. And when you look at it that way, it creates a challenge for us to measure up to as followers of Christ. There's a line in the Church of God in Christ pledge for the youth that I grew up saying, and it says that to be representative of holiness in our everyday life and to let our lives be the mirror that reflects the image of Christ. And I've always loved that, and that sticks with me even now, because that's really what it is. People should see Jesus through me. Jesus came, he lived, he walked the earth, and he did his job, and he set the example for us. And all we have to do is follow Jesus. This week's subject is called to follow, and we can find this in the book of St. Matthew, the Gospel according to St. Matthew. And this lesson kind of goes with the lesson that I missed 2 weeks ago, because it's the same account, but just different perspectives of when Jesus was calling his disciples. So that lesson, I believe, was called to sacrifice, and this lesson is called to follow. And it is about when Jesus was selecting his disciples. And we see here that he selected his disciples. He was there. First of all, he was there by Capernaum. And what I love about this is that, again, it points out that this was prophesied, that he would be there in Capernaum. And this is where I love the fact that Jesus was so careful to fulfill every prophecy about him, so that there would be no doubt. And this is what we call infallible proofs, because he knew that there would be people who would doubt his deity and that he was actually the Messiah and God's son. So he fulfilled these prophecies, and this prophecy from Isaiah had happened thousands of years prior to Jesus coming. And so this is just another way of proving who he is. And so he was there at Capernaum, and he called Peter and Andrew, who were brothers, and it says that they were out fishing, and he told them, okay, you're fishermen, but I'm going to make you fishers of men. And they dropped their nets and they followed him. And just to kind of go back a couple of weeks on the lesson about sacrifices, a couple things here. They were fishing. This was their livelihood. This was the way that they made money. And they sacrificed that, and they went and they followed Jesus. And I wanted to kind of bring that lesson in, because following Jesus does require some level of sacrifice. And so it's not going to be easy. It's, again, I always point out whenever I teach about the calling of the disciples, Jesus did not go find somebody. They weren't laying by the beach, by the seaside, tanning and relaxing. They were working. And God wants people who are going to work. And so he told them to follow me, and I'm going to make you fishers of men. Same thing. Jesus went and he came across James and John, and they were fishers as well. And he told them to follow him. And then it says that they left their father and they went and followed Jesus. And this, to me, is symbolic, because the fact that they left their father, that means that sometimes your calling will pull you away from family. It'll pull you away from friends and what we know to be familiar. And it requires faith. So now we've already established that following Jesus, it requires some level of sacrifice. And it also requires faith to be able to go and leave behind what's there. And the thing about it, when you study, because this account is in a couple of different gospels, and it talks about how Jesus told them, that how a servant is worthy of his hire, and that they were going to go and not really worry about bringing a whole bunch of stuff with them. And see, that's another lesson right there. When you follow Jesus, everybody's not going to be able to go with you. You can't take everything with you. Jesus has a very strict requirements, just like when you're on that flight, on an airplane, there's only so much you can put in those overhead compartments. And you always got that person who has too much stuff in the overhead compartment in their carry-on, and they have to go back and check their bags. And when you have to go back and check your bags, you risk losing your seat and missing your flight. See, we don't want to be trying to carry too much stuff when we follow Jesus and fool around and miss out on the trip because you want to go with Jesus. You are called to follow. And when you say the word follow, it indicates that there's what? A leader. Jesus is our leader, and we have to look to him for direction. When you're following someone, you're not just going your own way, doing your own thing. And so that contradicts the prevailing school of thought right now, which is do your own thing, be you, do you. And there was even a school of thought that said man was the measure of all things. And we're kind of moving back to that. And I'm seeing and hearing people kind of cross that line to where they're challenging God and godly ways and godly directions. And they're saying that I can do this and I can do that. And it's okay because I want to. This is not what Jesus is saying. Jesus is saying, follow me, follow my ways, follow my rules, follow my guides, follow my heart, follow my decisions, follow my directions, follow my instructions. And that's what all of that says when he says, follow me. And it also communicates a spirit of humility. And sometimes we don't want to humble ourselves before the Lord. And we think that we're it. I've studied. I've fasted, I've prayed, I've done this, I've done that. So I am the end all be all. And that is not what Jesus is saying. He's saying, follow me. And, he's looking at them. He's like, I don't care about your fish. I don't care what's going on with your family. Not to say that he doesn't care about your family or your ability to earn a living. But what he's saying is what I'm doing is more significant than that. And if you follow me, I will take care of that. And that is a message I want to really get across. Follow the direction that Jesus is leading you in. And again, these lessons, they hit home for me so much. This is my personal testimony. Sometimes God will call you out to do things and you just do not see a way how to do it. You just don't know. I one time I brought a message about a Gideon, that Gideon lifestyle. You're sitting there and you already are outnumbered. You already look like there's no way for you to win, and God tells you to do something else. And there have been times when I had to say, God, really? And just recently for me last week, I'm not going to give all of the details, but God just worked a miracle for me. I was sitting there, and I think I shared this in the last video, how difficult that day was. And I just got up and I did it anyway. And following what God had told me to do. And there were some things facing me and I just didn't know how it was going to work out. And I'm just like, God, how you expect me to keep producing these videos and keep working and being faithful when I have all of this going on? Something has to give. I'm only human. And God said to me, yeah, you are only human, but I'm God. And so let me handle this and follow me anyway. And I kid you not, that next day, I just got a miracle that I still can't believe. And that's what God will do for you when you follow him. And that's what he wants you to do. And it talks about faith and it talks about courage. All of those things are required in order to properly follow Jesus. In all thy ways acknowledge him. And no, I'm going to go back before that. Trust in the Lord. That's what I want. With all thine heart, and lean not to thine own understanding, and in all thy ways acknowledge him. And when you say acknowledge the Lord, that means you're checking in with him to make sure it's okay. And whatever he says about the situation, that's what you're going to do. You're not going to say, well, I don't want to do that. I want to do this and I want to do this now. No, you have to submit to the will of God. And when you look at these fishermen, they were there and they knew what they were doing. They were professional fishermen, and they let that go and they lended their skill and their abilities to Jesus and preaching out this gospel of Jesus. And as we know, they went on to become part of the 12 apostles, and they walked with him, and they did a great work in the ministry of the Lord. And above all, church has become very organized, structured, somewhat of a business. And, I've shared this before. I see a lot of people who are striving to be this position and that position. And at the end of the day, we really want to follow Christ. The most prestigious title that you can have as relates to God is a follower of Christ. And when you follow Christ, then he will elevate you to other positions, but you don't want to elevate yourself, because the word tells us that if you exalt yourself, you're going to be abased. But when God exalts you, no one can bring you down. And that's where you want to be. You want to be available. You want to be willing to follow the Lord. Let the Lord lift you up. Let the Lord save you and allow the Lord to work through you. And that is how we are to function, because Jesus was here and he's gone. The disciples were here and they're gone. Now, who's the disciples? We are. And so now we have been called to follow.